the Venezuelan dictator has doubled down. U.S. intelligence sources confirm that Nicolás Maduro has ordered the purchase of Russian explosives to be installed in Venezuela's main oil and gas wells. The plan, according to military reports, is clear. If the regime falls, the country burns with it. Just like Saddam Hussein did in the Gulf, Maduro threatens to turn the energy heart of South America into an inferno of fire and oil. The Caribbean enters a state of maximum alert, and the clock on the crisis begins to tick. The discovery began with local reports. Residents and workers in oil-producing areas observed unusual movements, discreet inspections, and unfamiliar men circulating near platforms and coastal wells. Sources obtained by U.S. intelligence included intercepted communications, surveillance images, and covert testimony from firefighters and local technicians. Combined, these pieces reveal a pattern: equipment and materials intended to cause large-scale fires. According to consulted officers, the information points to the acquisition of Russian-made explosives, along with technical instructions on how to install charges to maximize ignition and fire spread. The intention, according to the report, is not merely to destroy infrastructure, but to create an environmental catastrophe and a political shield that, paradoxically, would delay any external intervention. Captured conversations show concern among local agents. Firefighters reported being called to accompany inspections and, in alarmed tones, suggested the measures were designed to produce a long-lasting smoke column capable of large-scale contamination. In some recordings, there were explicit references to tactics used in past conflicts, including orders to sabotage wells to prevent a quick recovery of production. American intelligence, aware of the risks in the regime's history, began mapping routes for incoming and outgoing equipment, identifying those responsible and monitoring storage facilities. There were also claims of suspicious shipments with heavy materials and undeclared crates arriving at Allied airports. This is not mere rumor. There are logistical indicators that corroborate the resupply pattern. For analysts, the potential scale of the attack is concerning due to the density of Venezuelan oil fields and their proximity to sensitive marine areas. If executed, the plan would go far beyond economic damage. It would provoke a humanitarian, ecological, and geopolitical crisis with regional and global repercussions. The mapping also includes identifying critical points where an explosion would most affect ocean currents, and international rapid response teams are already being considered in contingency plans. The selective disclosure of these findings also aims to pressure internal actors to reconsider their support for the regime. Time is short. The risk window remains critical in the coming weeks. If the threat becomes reality, the result will be a layered catastrophe, environmental, economic, and social, with effects that could last for decades. The planned detonation of charges in oil wells would produce clouds of smoke and persistent flames that, in addition to destroying infrastructure, would poison the soil, air, and sea. Ocean currents could spread crude oil for hundreds of miles, multiplying the damage to coastal ecosystems and local fisheries. This is no vague hypothesis. Historical examples show what happens when oil wells are sabotaged en masse. In 1991, the systematic destruction of wells in Kuwait generated hundreds of fires that burned for months and caused severe, long-term environmental damage. Lessons that stand as warnings for any scorched earth strategy. Economically, burning reserves means burning capital that would take generations to recover. Venezuela would lose not only its present production, but also a substantial portion of its future export capacity. The cost of remediation and rehabilitation of affected areas would require massive public and private investment, as well as the displacement of populations and collapse of local production chains. Socially, the impact is immediate. Entire communities, fishermen, oil field workers, and their families would be directly affected, not only by the loss of income, but by health problems caused by smoke inhalation and food contamination. Politically, the comparison to Saddam Hussein is not rhetorical exaggeration. Actions aimed at destroying strategic infrastructure have a dual effect, attempting to create a shield against external intervention while imposing intolerable costs on the population as a form of coercion. However, history also shows that such acts rarely achieve their intended strategic goals. On the contrary, they leave behind international isolation and make any future reconstruction far more difficult. Furthermore, the suspected supply or material support from external actors, cited in the report as Russian-origin explosives, adds a geopolitical dimension that heightens a regional power struggle and could provoke multilateral responses. In recent weeks, U.S. military intelligence has raised the alert level across the Caribbean. According to Pentagon sources, specialized units for industrial fire containment and rapid response teams for environmental emergencies have already been deployed to forward bases in Puerto Rico and Curacao. This operation does not imply an immediate attack, but a strategic positioning to prevent the worst. In the event of deliberate sabotage, the protocol calls for simultaneous neutralization actions: thermal surveillance drones to identify heat sources, reconnaissance jets to outline critical zones, and support submarines ready to contain maritime leaks. Experts emphasize that the greatest challenge in such a scenario would not be military, but environmental. Extinguishing burning wells requires technology, experience, and time, factors that cost lives and billions of dollars. U.S. Commander Luis Quiñones, in a recent interview, explained that part of the procedures developed after the Kuwaiti oil fires have already been adapted for a potential Venezuelan collapse. According to him, with prior preparation, up to 70% of the potential damage could be prevented, but that would still leave 30% destruction, enough to plunge the country into economic and ecological chaos. Internally, Venezuela's military situation is fragile. Reports indicate that much of the equipment is without maintenance, soldiers lack training, and there's irregular use of both young and elderly recruits. In practice, the regime depends on a small core of loyal units and officers who, according to U.S. command, have already lost strategic sense and operate under a logic of political survival. This internal imbalance increases the risk of desperate decisions. With mounting international pressure and a countdown toward severe sanctions, Maduro may attempt a suicidal maneuver, destroying what remains the nation's main source of income. If that happens, analysts state that the U.S. response will be immediate, involving surgical neutralization of targets and total isolation of the regime. Now I ask you, would Maduro really be capable of destroying his own country, or is it all just a bluff? This is Military Report. Subscribe and continue following our reports.